Imagine waking up in a world that feels like it's crumbling around you. Every headline screams fear, every interaction feels hollow, and the future looks like a foggy road with no clear end. Now imagine someone hands you a key, not a key to escape, but a key to endure, to find peace, even thrive, right here in the ruins. That key was crafted by Arthur Schopenhauer, a man who stared into the abyss of human suffering and didn't just survive it, but understood it so deeply that he discovered a way to transcend it. Today we're going to walk his path together, and by the end, you might just see the darkness not as your enemy, but as your greatest teacher.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We often think that peace is something we find when everything around us becomes perfect. But Schopenhauer taught the opposite, that the world itself is fundamentally painful, and that expecting it to be anything other than that is the true cause of our misery. What if I told you that every time you expect life to be fair, kind, or just, you are setting yourself up for heartbreak? Schopenhauer invites us to accept a brutal but freeing truth. Existence itself is suffering, and yet, within that suffering, we can carve out a sanctuary of the mind so powerful that no external storm can touch it. When I first heard this, it shook me. It felt like giving up hope. But then I realized, it's not about giving up hope, it's about releasing illusions. What illusions are you still gripping so tightly that they cut into your hands? Are you waiting for the perfect relationship, the perfect job, the perfect day? Schopenhauer would say, drop those chains. The world owes you nothing. And in realizing that, you are finally free to live without constant disappointment. Schopenhauer's secret weapon against the agony of life was the cultivation of the inner world. He believed that art, music, philosophy, and deep contemplation could lift us above the endless hunger for more, the endless striving that he called the will. The will is that blind force inside you that is never satisfied, the craving for success, love, pleasure, recognition. It drives everything, and yet it never lets you rest. Pause for a second and ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt content for more than a fleeting moment? If you're honest, you'll see that the will is always whispering, more, 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 more. Imagine trying to quench your thirst by drinking seawater. That's what feeding the will is like. Every pleasure turns into a new craving. Every achievement becomes a new standard to surpass. Schopenhauer saw this cycle and said, enough. He suggested that instead of feeding the will, we should quiet it. How? Through aesthetic experience, through losing ourselves in beauty, art, and pure contemplation where, for a moment, we forget our desires and simply exist. Have you ever lost yourself in music so completely that you forgot who you were? That's a glimpse of the peace Schopenhauer points to. But it's not easy. Quieting the will demands a kind of inner rebellion against everything society tells you to value. Society screams at you to chase wealth, fame, relationships, power. Schopenhauer whispers, let it go. He teaches that real happiness comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting less, from needing less, from seeing that in this very moment, even in the middle of suffering, you can find something deeper than happiness, tranquility. There's a story about Schopenhauer walking through a park, watching children play. He didn't envy their laughter. He saw it as a momentary distraction from inevitable suffering. Yet he smiled, because he understood that even in small, fleeting joys, there is a window into a deeper peace. Not the peace of possessing, but the peace of being. Can you see the difference? Can you imagine a life where you are not tossed around by every wave of desire, but instead float calmly, knowing that nothing can truly disturb your center? When I tried to live this way, it was terrifying at first. Letting go of ambition felt like losing a part of myself. But slowly, I realized the part I was losing wasn't really me. It was a puppet controlled by the will. In the silence left behind, I found something stronger, something more real. I found stillness. Have you ever tasted that stillness? If not, what are you still clinging to that keeps you from it? Schopenhauer also believed that compassion is one of the few ways we can transcend the prison of the will. When we feel true empathy for another being, we momentarily forget our own desires. We step outside our own endless hunger and connect to something larger. Think about the last time you helped someone without expecting anything in return. Didn't it feel different from the shallow highs of getting what you want? Compassion is not just a moral duty, it's a way out of suffering. In a world obsessed with self-promotion and self-gratification, practicing compassion is a radical act. It is a rebellion against the tyranny of the will. It is a way of saying, I am not just a bundle of cravings. I can choose to care, to connect, to give without needing to take. How different would your life look if every day you made compassion, not achievement, your highest goal? Schopenhauer's path is not about escaping pain, but about transforming our relationship to it. Pain becomes a teacher, not a curse. Every disappointment strips away an illusion. Every loss shows us the impermanence of all things. And in seeing clearly, without the fog of false hope, we begin to find a different kind of hope, the hope that we can endure, that we can find beauty even in the brokenness. Imagine standing in the ruins of a fallen city, the wind howling around you, dust in the air. Most people would despair, but Schopenhauer would kneel down, pick up a shattered piece of stone, and marvel at the beauty of its texture, its color, its history. Even in destruction, he would find something worth contemplating. Can you see how powerful that mindset is? In a world that constantly disappoints, this way of seeing is invincible. By now you might be wondering, if desire is the root of suffering, should we eliminate all desires? Schopenhauer doesn't tell us to become emotionless robots. Instead, he invites us to shift our desires from the external to the internal. Desire less for possessions, status, and fleeting pleasures. Desire more for wisdom, for understanding, for connection. In this way, desire becomes an ally, not a master. As we walk this path together, I have to ask you, what are your deepest desires right now? Are they leading you toward peace or chaining you to endless striving? Be brutally honest with yourself. The chains you refuse to see are the ones that bind you the tightest. Schopenhauer's teachings are not easy. They demand courage, the courage to face life as it is, not as we wish it to be. But in that courage, there is a freedom greater than any pleasure the world can offer. There is a peace that no darkness can steal. And that peace is waiting for you right now if you dare to seek it. When we first step onto Schopenhauer's path, we often stumble. The habits of craving, of chasing illusions, are deeply rooted in us. Society rewards them. Friends encourage them. Even our own mind, desperate for distraction, tries to pull us back into the cycle of endless wanting. But every time we fall, every time we catch ourselves chasing another mirage, we are given another chance to wake up. Are you willing to use every failure, every disappointment, as a teacher instead of a tormentor? The first lesson we must learn is acceptance. Not passive resignation, but an active, clear-eyed acceptance of reality as it is. Life will not bend to our wishes. People will not always be kind. Dreams will not always come true. And yet, within that raw, unfiltered reality, there is something profoundly beautiful. Imagine looking at the night sky. The stars do not shine for you personally. They simply exist, magnificent and indifferent. Can you learn to love the world in that same way, not because it serves you, but because it simply is? Once we accept the nature of existence, a strange thing happens. The fear that once ruled us begins to lose its power. If pain is inevitable, we no longer have to be terrified of it. If loss is certain, we no longer have to cling so desperately. If death is guaranteed, we no longer have to waste our lives in denial. We can start living fully, honestly, courageously. What would your life look like if you lived every day knowing you owed nothing to the future, and the future owed nothing to you? Schopenhauer also teaches us the power of solitude. In solitude, we are stripped of distractions. There is no one to impress, no audience to perform for, no competition to win. It is just us and the raw truth of our own being. Many people fear solitude because it confronts them with themselves. But through solitude, we can build an inner fortress that no chaos of the world can breach. Have you ever sat in silence long enough to hear the true sound of your own mind? What did you find there? There is a practice in Schopenhauer's philosophy that I find especially powerful: the deliberate contemplation of suffering. Not to wallow in it, but to understand it, to see it clearly. When we contemplate suffering our own and that of others, we cultivate compassion and humility. We realize how fragile and precious every moment of peace truly is. And we stop taking our comforts, our joys, even our breath, for granted. What would change if you began each day by remembering that suffering is not the exception but the rule, and that every small joy is a miracle? Through this contemplation, we start to shift our identity. We cease to see ourselves as the center of the universe. Instead, we become part of the vast, tragic, beautiful tapestry of existence. Our personal desires shrink in importance. Our personal pains lose their sting. We see that everyone is struggling, everyone is striving, everyone is hurting in their own way. How can we be arrogant when we recognize our own vulnerability mirrored in every face we meet? Another critical element of Schopenhauer's path is the appreciation of beauty as a means of transcendence. Beauty for Schopenhauer is not just decoration, it is a doorway. When we experience beauty, whether in nature, music, poetry, or philosophy, we are lifted out of the personal, out of the hungry self, and into something purer. We lose ourselves, and in losing ourselves, we find peace. What are the moments of beauty that have silenced your mind and filled your heart without asking for anything in return? Seek them. Cherish them. They are not frivolous, they are vital. Yet even as we cultivate these moments, we must not cling to them. Beauty is fleeting. Joy is fleeting. Life itself is fleeting. Schopenhauer urges us to savor without attachment, to love without possession, to live without demanding permanence. This is perhaps the hardest lesson of all. Can you love the world deeply, knowing it will all slip through your fingers? Can you love without needing to keep, to own, to control? In this way, Schopenhauer's path is one of profound tenderness. It teaches us to hold life gently, to appreciate every fragile miracle without crushing it in our grasp. It teaches us to be kind not because we expect kindness in return, but because kindness itself is a rebellion against the darkness. Every act of compassion, every moment of gratitude, every breath of awe is a victory over suffering, however small. There is a story that Schopenhauer would often sit for hours, staring at a single tree, a painting, or listening to a piece of music. In those moments, he was not escaping reality, he was entering into it more fully than most of us ever do. He was practicing the art of pure perception, where the mind stops grasping and simply receives. Have you ever truly seen something without immediately labeling it, judging it, trying to use it? Try it. Look at a leaf, a cloud, a face. See it as if for the first time. Feel the weight of its existence. That is the doorway to peace. And yet Schopenhauer does not promise that peace will be constant. He is brutally honest, suffering will return. The will is never fully extinguished. Life will continue to wound us. But after walking this path, we are no longer defenseless. We know the weapons of perception, of acceptance, of compassion. We know how to find beauty even in the ruins. We know how to endure with dignity. In the darkest moments, when hope seems foolish and pain seems endless, Schopenhauer's voice is a lantern. It reminds us that we are not alone, that suffering is the common thread of all living things, that peace is not the absence of suffering, but the presence of wisdom in the midst of it, and that wisdom is always within reach if we are willing to see clearly and feel deeply. So I ask you, what darkness are you facing right now? What pain are you carrying? Dare to look at it without flinching. Dare to accept it without bitterness. Dare to find within it the seeds of a deeper peace. You are stronger than you think, not because you can avoid pain, but because you can endure it with open eyes and an open heart. Schopenhauer's path is not for those who seek easy answers. It is for those who are willing to trade comfort for truth, illusions for reality, shallow pleasure for deep peace. It is a path of courage, of resilience, of quiet, stubborn hope. And if you choose to walk it, you will find that even in the darkest world, there is a light that no darkness can extinguish, a light that burns within you. Now that we have walked so far down this path together, it is time to face the final, and perhaps the greatest challenge that Schopenhauer sets before us, the challenge of renunciation. At the heart of his philosophy lies the idea that the ultimate form of freedom comes when we loosen the grip of the will so thoroughly that we no longer even seek personal salvation through it. We stop asking life to be different. We stop asking for life to serve our desires. We simply exist, fully, deeply, silently. This is not nihilism. It is not despair. It is a kind of liberation that most people never taste because they are too busy fighting against reality, clawing at it, trying to reshape it to fit their fantasies. But what if you stopped fighting? What if you let go of the endless battle to make the world bow to your wishes? Would you lose yourself, or would you finally find yourself? This is the terrifying, beautiful door that Schopenhauer opens for us. He shows us that by resigning from the endless war of desire, we can achieve a state of serene acceptance. We can become like a mountain in a storm, not untouched by the rain and wind, but unmoved by them. We feel pain, yes. We feel loss, yes. But we are no longer destroyed by them, because our deepest sense of self no longer depends on what we gain or lose. Imagine a life where your inner peace is not at the mercy of every external change. Can you feel how powerful that would be? But how do we get there? Schopenhauer suggests a few practices. First, cultivate detachment, not coldness, not indifference, but a gentle looseness toward everything you experience. When something good happens, enjoy it, but do not cling to it. When something bad happens, endure it, but do not let it define you. Practice seeing everything, every pleasure, every pain as passing clouds in the vast sky of your existence. What if you could watch your own emotions the way you watch the weather, knowing that no storm lasts forever? Second, deepen your compassion. As we loosen our grip on our personal desires, we naturally become more attuned to the suffering of others. Compassion is not a sacrifice on this path, it is a reward. It is a sign that we are no longer trapped inside the narrow prison of self-interest. When you act out of genuine compassion, you transcend the will, even if only for a moment. You enter into a state where your happiness and another's happiness are no longer separate. Have you ever felt that kind of unity? That kind of boundless care? Third, nurture your love of beauty and contemplation. Let art, music, philosophy, and the natural world become your refuge. Not because they offer escape, but because they reveal a deeper reality beyond desire. Every time you lose yourself in a piece of music, every time you stand awestruck before a sunset, you taste the freedom that Schopenhauer points to. Do you make enough time in your life for these moments? Or are you too busy chasing things that will never satisfy you? Finally, practice gratitude not for what you have, but for what you are able to experience at all. Gratitude, in Schopenhauer's sense, is not about counting blessings like possessions. It is about marveling that anything exists at all, that consciousness, that beauty, that even suffering are possible. It is about standing in awe of the mystery of being. When you feel gratitude at this level, nothing in the external world can take it away from you. When was the last time you felt grateful simply to be alive, without needing life to be any particular way? As you walk this path, you will notice a profound shift. The highs and lows of ordinary life will still come, but they will no longer control you. Success and failure will lose their sharpness. Praise and blame will lose their sting. You will find yourself more patient, more compassionate, more quietly joyful. You will find that your peace does not depend on circumstances, but grows from within like an indestructible tree in the center of your being. And when suffering comes, as it inevitably will, you will welcome it as an old teacher. You will sit with your pain, listen to it, learn from it. You will let it break your illusions, but not your spirit. You will discover that suffering, far from being your enemy, is the fire that forges your deepest strength. Can you imagine greeting your next heartbreak not with despair, but with a calm, sorrowful gratitude for the deepening of your soul? Schopenhauer's wisdom does not promise a life without pain. It promises a soul that can endure pain without losing itself. The soul that can find peace not by running from darkness, but by walking through it with open eyes. A soul that understands that even in a broken world, even in the face of inevitable loss and death, there is a profound and unshakable beauty to existence itself. If you have followed me this far, you are already different from who you were when we began. You have glimpsed a deeper truth. You have felt the stirrings of a peace that does not depend on anything outside yourself. You have seen that the darkness of the world is not an obstacle to peace, but the very condition that makes deep peace possible. Now the question is, will you continue? Will you take this wisdom into your daily life, moment by moment, choice by choice? Will you remember, when the storms come, that you are the mountain, not the storm? Will you seek beauty, practice compassion, cultivate gratitude, and loosen the grip of the will? Will you dare to live not for the endless hunger of desire, but for the quiet, radiant joy of simply being? The world will not become less dark because you have walked this path, but you will become a light within it. A light that shines not because it denies the darkness, but because it embraces it and transcends it. A light that no sorrow, no loss, no suffering can ever extinguish. This is the proven way to find peace in a dark world. This is Schopenhauer's path. It is not easy. It is not quick. But it is real. It is powerful. And it is open to you, right now, if you have the courage to walk it. The choice is yours. Will you take the first step?